Why, hello there, everybody, and welcome to the Comedy and Magic Podcast. I'm your host, John Marshall.
Yes.
If you're new to the channel, please remember to like and subscribe. Go ahead and smack that bell to be notified of future upcoming podcasts. Before I introduce my first guest, I'm going to go ahead and show you a clip from his award-winning magic act, Mr. Thimbles. Here we go. All right, joining me on the show today is one of the hardest working magicians out of Chicago, Illinois. Please welcome to the podcast, the one and only Mark Presley Hawkins. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Hey, John, how you doing?
Wonderful. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you. That was quite an intro.
How is the weather over there in Chicago right now?
It's a hot one today. It has to be about 90. Yeah,
What?
I was just telling my wife I shouldn't have shut down the pool. I could have kept it open another month.
Absolutely.
You know?
So, so how old were you when you first realized you wanted to become a professional magician?
I was pretty young. I don't know if I exactly knew in depth that I wanted to do magic because I was young, and when you're young, it's hard to, put all those thoughts together. But you kind of have an idea that you're interested in something. And as years progressed, more and more, I thought, hey, this would be really cool. Yeah, so I was 6 years old when I got interested in magic.
Who are some of your biggest influences?
David Copperfield, really, I liked David Copperfield more in like as years went by, like maybe in the 1990s. Uh, Earlier than that, it kind of was, I think, Duck Henning. He
Oh, of
was,
course, Doug,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. But when I started watching David Copperfield, he really struck me with his storytelling and being able to hit emotion. And like I said, I got into magic at 6 years old. I kind of flip flop back and forth where I'm into magic, I'm out of magic, and usually it was because women would come into play during that time, and I'd get distracted.
Absolutely, absolutely. Are you familiar with Jeff McBride as well?
Oh yeah, he's a big fan. Yeah, I love Jeff. He's one of my actually. Uh, I went to his school of magic a few years ago.
Me
Uh,
twice.
yeah, yeah, and he's just a great guy. Yeah, very always welcoming and willing to help you out. So he
Yes.
was a big influence on my life as well. Yeah.
When you were there, did you also meet Eugene Berger, or had he already
Yes,
passed?
Eugene Berger was, he was around. He was alive back then, and I actually got to sit with him a little bit and have lunch. So that was something.
Oh, that is a very special thing. Yeah, I remember having lunch with Jeff and the whole gang.
Yeah,
Jeff and Eugene took us to one of his favorite Chinese places up the
yeah,
street, and
went there too.
oh man, it was just a lot of fun. And of course, being a part of the mystery school, you get to go to see. Well, you probably did. Did you see the Lance Burton show while you were there?
No, I didn't. I'm trying to remember what show. I think we might have seen Copperfield. I don't remember now.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I'm
I wish.
jealous.
Well, why didn't
Yeah,
you cry
right.
about it?
Yeah.
I would love to have Copperfield on the show one of these times, man. That's a legend right there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, when you first started learning magic and what have you, like an example, did you find magic books early on?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I found magic books. It's a lot different than today because everything is like easy access, like instant gratification.
Too
You
easy,
don't have
too
to
easy.
really, you don't have to really work. You can find everything on YouTube. These people are giving out secrets left and right, and I didn't have that kind of I don't know if you'd want to call it luxury, but things easy to access. So I used to go to library. I discovered one day that they had magic books at the library, and I would go to the
Yes.
library and check out magic books. And some of those magic books, as you know, aren't the easiest as far as following with illustrations and things. And so there would be many times where I would get frustrated because I try to learn something and I couldn't figure it out. And maybe that's a good thing because it left the reader uh, some room for creativity to
There it
maybe kind of
is.
figure it out on your own and make something work just by looking a little bit of a few illustrations and, you know, some explanation into the effects. Yeah.
Possibly one of my biggest influence was this man right here, Mark Wilson.
Mark Wilson. Yes, I own that book also.
One of the greatest books in my library, I'll be honest with you. I Once I got this book, I was able to pick and choose several of the routines and things to start a kids party magic, and
Yeah.
it really got me started. I mean, and the illustrations in those things were really great.
Oh, yeah. He was great.
And he
Lots
was
of
a
good stuff
wonderful person to
there.
meet. I don't know if you ever met Mark Wilson, but he was a wonderful person to meet. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. No, I did not get to see one of his shows, and I wish I could have seen some of the old timers. Like last night, I was actually watching on YouTube Blackstone, some of his floating light bulb, and it's just I just love that kind of magic, the stuff that's like kind of old school, and I'm incorporating some of that in my shows, doing some of the older things. Like yesterday, I did a birthday party and I did the vanishing fishbowl, the fishbowl on a pole trick,
Oh,
and
nice.
people are just in awe with that. I have a lot of, your old school type magic parlor stage stuff, by what is it, UF Grant, I think, that made some
Right.
of those products. Yeah. And so, yeah, I just like keeping that magic alive because it's not performed too much these days.
Yeah, that was my next question. What was your favorite style of magic? You just said the classics, so that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Classics, parlor, thimble magic. I've actually entered in a lot of competitions just doing a thimble and sewing routine, which Jeff McBride helped me out with, and I won several first place awards, Daytona Magic, Magic Palooza. Yeah, it was a great time. I
That
didn't
is
do too good.
terrific.
Yeah, I didn't do too well at Abbott's. I think I went there for 7 years. I competed one year after another. Finally, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I need to try a different place. And the following year, uh, I went to Daytona uh, convention. I won first place stage, and I believe first place close up. And then 6 months later, I went to Palooza and I won first place again. So
Man,
sometimes,
congratulations.
yeah, it was a great time. Location, location, location.
Yes. So, who are some of your favorite magic merchandise places to get your tricks and what have you?
Okay. Well, I like Penguin. I've bought things from there. Vanishing Ink. Let's see. There's a few other ones that are not coming. They're at the top of my head here. They're not coming to me, but yeah, and then I have some magicians where I'll just buy independently from them. Maybe they created something like one of my good friends, Steve Hart. He has
Oh,
a nice website with his products. We talk daily. He's kind of like a magic mentor slash life coach slash friend. He,
Steven's a good guy.
yeah, I consult with him a lot with things when I don't always have the answers. So it's always nice to have a good magic friend that you can go to.
I confess I go to Steven quite a bit, and he was on the show last year. Wonderful guy. Just
Yeah.
I love him to death.
The thing is Steve doesn't really tell you what to do. He comes up with different scenarios where, things that may be going on in your life, and then it helps you kind of sort it out with
Yeah.
how you want to go.
Murray was supposed to be on the show several months ago, and then I got the news that he was exposing magic, and I was like, "Oh no, I can't do that."
Right.
Uh, I almost wanted to almost interview him just so I could put him on the spot and ask him why, because
Yeah.
it's just so unnecessary to do it.
Right.
If you
Yeah.
have people that are willing to pay, see, that's a different story. You've got something to lose. But if you're getting these secrets and what have you for free,
Yeah.
most of these people think nothing of doing that. And, you
Sure.
know, most magicians take an oath. I know I did.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think that, like, for example, my wife, she's very supportive of my magic. She's always been, there for me. And I can't imagine suddenly turning, things around and suddenly, I'm doing magic exposing it and she's there right next to me cheering me on, you know,
Right,
like
right.
or making me look like oh, I know what you did. You did this, and then like making them feel. I try to come up with words to articulate what I'm saying, but you know what I'm saying,
Absolutely.
where it just doesn't come off very positive, and the thing is with YouTube and Facebook and things of Facebook has given people the ability, I think, in the last year or so to monetize. So a lot of people are jumping on it to make, money.
Right.
There's people actually making, a living with these videos on Facebook, Facebook Reels and things. I'm one of them. Facebook gave me the ability to monetize. You have to get invited, and
Right.
I usually make videos, and I try to make all my videos like positive. I do a segment when a magician, and then I'll think of some sort of trick I'm going to do with that story I'm doing. Like when a magician, I'm trying to think of runs out of milk. Okay, and in the segment, I come up with a magical way to make solve a problem, make milk appear so that I could pour it into my cereal. So I'm not just doing a trick. I'm trying to make a story of it, make it
Make a
fun.
purpose for it. Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
And I try to make everything organic, which is really difficult because a lot of the magic doesn't look like everyday props. But if you use your imagination, you could kind of give it a little bit of a purpose and make it a little bit more sensible than just doing the trick. So I have a very challenging because I have a minute and 30 seconds to make a story out of something. So yeah, lots of fun.
I agree. I mean, magic is definitely more than just a performance. It really is an art.
It
If
sure
you
is.
if you can fool people and get away with it, and I love actually telling them at the beginning, this is all fake. What you're about to see, I'm gonna
Right.
fool you.
Right. I love that.
And they're on their ball. They're really trying to watch for the secrets and what have you. And when you get away with it, it's beautiful. It's just have you ever performed at the castle, Magic Castle?
No, I haven't. I'd love to one day. That
It's
would
got
be
to
on
be
my
on the
bucket,
bucket list.
right? Exactly.
It's on
Yeah.
mine for sure. I was a member of the Magic Castle for 2 years during the early 2000s, and uh, things happen in life that we just can't afford to keep going. The membership isn't cheap.
Is that right? Yeah.
Membership isn't cheap, but honestly, if I lived still in Southern California, I would have definitely made sure I would kept being a member there because there's so many resources there. They do lectures. They've got the beautiful library that's downstairs. Um,
Okay.
just so many avenues to open there that are, oh, it makes me cringe when I think about it. I just love the castle.
Yeah.
It's a great place, iconic in every way. You never been there then, huh? Not even
No,
visiting?
I haven't.
Oh man. So did they have anything like that there in Chicago? I know Eugene, you used to live in Chicago.
Yeah.
Um, he spoke very highly of God, what was it? The restaurant he was always at.
Oh, Julian's?
Yes. Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
I have worked there, but I worked there after it was no longer Julian's, but it still had a rich magic history because the new owners, when Mr. Julian died, for the folks that are watching and listening, Julian's was a famous German restaurant. I think it goes back to the 1920s, maybe even more. And Mr. Julian was a big fan of magic. He loved magic, and he would perform for people at the tables while they're waiting for their food. And as time went by, it started getting pretty popular, and there would be magicians coming into town, like Blackstone. They're doing a tour. They would stop by, and he would let them perform at people's tables. And in 19, I think the mid 1990s or so, Mr. Shulian passed, and the restaurant was stagnant for about 10 years. And then a new restaurant owner came. It's called O'Donovan's, and they carried on the tradition of magic. So I had worked there maybe 10 years doing magic under O'Donovan's. And I would get people in, many people coming in saying, yeah, we used to come here when I was a kid, and it was Shulian. So I think it's fantastic that the restaurant keeps up that tradition. They have magic there Friday, Saturday, and Sundays, 3 days a week.
That's awesome, man. You were right about one thing. Magic tricks, when you buy them, they really don't look like ordinary items or objects that you would see every day. But I think that that's what makes it more fascinating. People are like, "What the heck is that? What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah,
but if you do things with everyday objects, yeah, people are like, "Oh, I want to try that when I get home tonight."
right.
And then make a heck of a mess and go, that magician, he was good. So what do you do in your spare time, brother?
Well, right now, boy, that's a great question. I actually left my full-time job about 10 months ago.
Hmm.
So I'm doing magic full time now.
Good for you.
I was working at a college for 23 years as a mail carrier. My boss retired a few years ago, and they had these guys take over as management, and then it just became a not pleasant place. I started dealing with, uh, you know, supervisors that were controlling, micromanaging, narcissistic, and started writing me up left and right about everything. My boss had a perfect record. All of a sudden, there was a problem. So I finally made up my mind that I was going to get out. And I'll never forget one of my last days there. Uh, I had, like I was saying, I was running into some problems all of a sudden where I'm getting written up left and right, uh, it, saying things that I'm doing that they themselves are doing, like being on the phone. And I started
Right.
pushing back, like, well, what about you? Every morning I come in, you're on the phone. And I wasn't playing their game. And there was a moment where I already made up my mind that I'm leaving. And I remember that day, my last words to my supervisor. He was giving me a hard time about something, and we were alone in the print shop slash mailroom. My last words to him was, "If you're going to play baseball, you better have a mitt." That freaked him out. What do you mean? What do you mean? Uh, Like he's like, "Could you repeat that?" It kind of took him off guard. Basically, what I was saying to him is that, hey, if you're going to play this game, you better be ready to play because I'm not going to be putting up with this, you
Oh,
know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, after I left, a very short amount of time, I was getting chosen. I don't know what happened. The only thing I could think of is, the universe is very powerful. And when you start shifting your thinking and the universe starts, like, reacting to that and putting back out there what you're putting into it.
Good call.
Yeah, so I started focusing, and plus the pressure was on. I no longer had a full-time job, so I
Right.
had to really focus. And within very short amount of time, I do a lot of restaurants. It's my specialty. Very short amount of time, maybe 4 months, I was working 7 restaurants a week doing magic. And then I
Impressive.
started, yeah, and then I started uh, a mailing. I'd go on Google, I'd look up daycare centers, nursing homes, and get their address. Instead of paying a company hundreds of dollars for a mailing list, I would just create my own, and I made postcards, sent them out, and I started doing daycare centers and you know uh, retirement homes on top of my restaurants I was doing. So all of a sudden, you know, I'm a professional working magician, like that.
That's
But
awesome.
it's not easy. I might be making it sound easy, but it isn't. You got to really put in your time, blood, sweat, and tears.
Well, as Robert Bax once told me, if you enjoy doing what you do, it's not technically work.
Right,
And I know just about anybody who loves magic loves doing it. And it's either a passion or it's just a hobby for some people. But
right,
I admire anybody who can make a living at it. I'm grateful that people
right.
can make a living at it.
Yeah, I
I
make the
hope there
bugs.
will be a time in my life when I can do that as well. But it sounds like you've got the formula and the recipe to where you're going, and that's very
Sometimes,
important.
yeah, sometimes it just falls into place. You focus, you make that decision, and you'll be surprised how things just doors start opening with you. And yeah, like I'm a firm believer of that, definitely.
So you mentioned restaurant magic and kids parties. What do you find you do more of?
Right now it's the restaurant magic, but when I was working my full-time job, I maybe worked one restaurant and I would pass out my business cards for birthdays, you know. And for the amount of years I've been there, I've been at one restaurant for about 30 years. Long
Wow.
time. Out of those 30 years, I'm lucky if I got maybe 10, 20 shows out of it, which doesn't seem like a whole lot because that's in a 30-year span.
Right.
And when I got these other restaurants, I redid my business card. And because a lot of restaurants, you get family in there and there's kids. So I started thinking, okay, I need to change my business card. So when I give it to them, they see I'm a birthday magician. And it
As well.
says
Yeah.
in the card, it says on the card, birthday magician. And I have a QR code there. So they scan it, takes you right to my website. You can see my packages and pricing. So all of a sudden, I'm getting phone calls for people that see me at restaurants for birthday parties, and I never got that before. But one of the other things that I added that I changed is when I'm done with my magic, I'll say, oh, by the way, here's my business card. Yeah, I do birthday parties. I specialize in birthday parties. I do a great show. The kids love my magic show. I do 45-minute magic show and balloons, and I can even make you float in the air. So I take about a 20 seconds window to sell myself. And so I've started doing that at each table where before I just kind of give my card out, like here, I do magic for all events or birthdays, and then I'm leaving. Uh, I didn't really go into it. So maybe that's what's been helping me. Also, Jeff McBride uh, recommends that when you're doing restaurant work, to maybe work in that you do magic at birthdays, work it into your routine. Like Like I'm doing Professor's Nightmare. Like, oh, last week I was doing this trick. You should have saw the look on the birthday person's face. You kind of remind me of them that you have that same smile. It's like I hope this you look as magical as the person I did this for at the birthday party.
Professor's Nightmare. I carry that with me everywhere I go because it's just
Yeah,
easy to do and you can do it impromptu anywhere, anytime. Same with the sponge balls.
yeah.
But it's nice that you have a wife that supports you, my friend. I was married for 10 years to my second wife, and she didn't support that in any way, shape, or form. And
No, I'm sorry to hear that.
it trickled into my life and made me very miserable. Uh, Needless to say, we're not together anymore. We're getting divorced. But
Mm,
uh, but as far as that goes, I shouldn't have let somebody influence me to stop doing what I love doing because I think I would have been much further in life if I hadn't
yeah,
taken that pause in life. Um, I
it's
was
never too
fortunate
late.
enough. Well, that's what Steve Spill said to me.
Oh yeah.
We were on the phone talking one night, and I told him I was, gonna retire, and he says, "Well, how old are you?" And at the time, I was like 48. He was
Hmm.
going, "What are you talking about? You're young. People are now gonna start taking you seriously at your age. Don't give it up."
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I can't get Steve to do the show. I mean, he influenced me to stay in the business, but he won't do the show unless he could sell books. And I'd buy one. I'd buy a set of all of them if he did the show.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody would buy his books, but I'm sure somebody would. Um, but he's a good man. I think the world of Steve Spill. He's had a really good run in the business. Um, But yeah, positivity is really great, and it sounds like you're a very positive person in that aspect. If you had any advice to give a up and coming budding magician, somebody really interested in making a living at it, what would that be for you?
To make a living at it,
Yeah.
right? Okay, well, boy, that's a great question, and there's so many different variables with that. I would say number one, with my success is persistence. I got a lot of my restaurants through persistence. I would go on Google and I would type in Northwest Suburb restaurants in Chicago, Chicagoland area. I'd get maybe 50 restaurants. Well, there's a lot more. I mean, there's thousands of restaurants. But I would take maybe the first 10 restaurants. I'd get the phone numbers. I'd get a notepad. I write the phone numbers down. And I made a goal that every day I would call 10 restaurants. Well, in 1 week, you called 70 restaurants. You're going to hit at least one, maybe more, that are going to at least be interested in what you have to offer as far as doing magic at the restaurant. So that's what I would do. I would also carry my business cards, and I have like a little brochure made that gives information about my restaurant work. I also had flyers and posters. That's part of my marketing. When a restaurant hires me, I would make up a poster for them to put in their window. It's like a 16 by 20 poster, nice size poster. Uh, so I printed up miniature 8 by 11 posters and I put them in those clear see-through folders. And I had a whole binder of all the restaurants I worked at. And I keep that in a car because sometimes I'm doing a show. I'd pass a restaurant and I'd be like, oh, that looks like a cool place. I'm going to go there. I'd already have everything in my car to show them.
Right.
So that helped out with the selling. But another thing as far as doing it full time, I think figuring out what type of magic you want to do. Do you want to be a restaurant magician, a birthday magician, a trade show magician? Uh, and focus on that. Focus on your priorities. Hold on here. Okay, another scam call.
Yeah, corporate magic is really big for those who are dedicated enough to do that because I know it's a lot of work doing those.
Right,
Travel, you got to travel, you got to do a lot of things to keep up with that, but the pay is
right,
good.
right. And you want to have a nice, you know, a nice refined show, a nice format show uh, for whatever genre of magic you're going to be doing, whether it's going to be for adults, birthday party, that type of thing. So I guess, you just have to really figure out who you are and what your
Right.
strengths are with the magic. If you follow me on Facebook, you could go to my page and I think there's a link there that says reels and you could see all the different reels I was talking about where I'm doing like these little mini stories doing magic. And
Little vignettes. Vignettes.
yeah, there was one story I wanted to share because you mentioned magic books early on.
Yes.
So I have a story, and this was pretty much life changing for me. And this it goes all the way back to when I was about 10 years old. I would get books from the library, and I remember, I think at this point I was in maybe high school, and I checked out a book at the high school, and it was Houdini's Greatest Escapes, and it would explain some of Houdini's techniques and escapes. And I was a very naughty boy. I never returned that book. I kept it. I still have it today. Yeah. Yeah. Just one of those things. But
Made it
anyway,
disappear, did you?
yeah, little did I know that that book would one day come into play with saving my life. So
How is that, my friend?
in the mid 1990s, this is when I worked at the college. I was still working at the college. In fact, I had a different job then. I was a custodian. I would, do cleaning, and I had a side hustle, a side business. I was doing also cleaning for a couple restaurants, and I was single at the time. I was working my butt off because I wanted to buy a house, and I also wanted to invest with some larger magic illusions because at the time I thought it'd be cool to get into illusions.
Yeah.
So I was investing a lot of money into some of those things. So one night I was cleaning the restaurant. I'd clean, you know, in the late night, early morning, and I was cleaning the restaurant. I went to open up an entrance door to uh, wipe to clean the other side of the entrance door glass when all of a sudden I was confronted by four masked robbers. And they forced me into the restaurant and yelled, "Get on the floor!" And they're holding, weapons up like tire irons and, who knows what else.
Oh my God.
And that's when I saw my life before my eyes because they depict that in movies, like when somebody's about to go, you see like little scenes and pictures of people and families. That's how it was in real life. And so I'm like thinking, because they asked me to face down on the cement and in the restaurant. So I was like, this is it. And once they got in, they then stood me up and they put me, handcuffed me using these plastic riot cuffs to the footrest of the where you rest your feet when you're sitting at the bar. Now these guys were very sophisticated because they were wearing all black, like ninja uh, outfit or something. They were wearing a black mask, black clothing, black boots. And I even noticed that they had radios on them to communicate amongst each other. These guys asked where the safe was. I told them in the back. They went to work on it. I hear them chiseling and hammering and all kinds of, you know, noises going on, like an electric saw or something. They're trying to bust the safe. And they had one guy just about 10 feet away from me. He was kind of stooped down, staring me down, kind of like in a kneeling position with a weapon behind him, just staring me off while I'm handcuffed to the bar. And these guys working on the safe, apparently they had a bit of trouble trying to open it. So they called him for help. So he went to help him. And then I'm by myself, just thinking, oh, geez, what's going to happen? All these things are going through my mind. And they sent them back to check up on me. This happened a few times. I noticed that whenever he went to check up on me, I would see a shadow because the safe was in the office in the kitchen, and the kitchen had a whole open uh, entranceway, whatever you want to call it, that then led to the main part of the restaurant. And I noticed that whenever somebody came to check up on me, I would see a shadow about 5, 10 seconds before he was actually in view and they could see me.
Right.
So I started thinking, and it's amazing how the brain starts to think of things. And by the way, I kind of skipped the most important thing. When they asked me to put out my hands, when they handcuffed me, when they're going to get ready to handcuff me to the bar, I remembered the technique in the book I read about Houdini's greatest escapes. And that's right, you kind of expand your hands. So
Mhm.
all of that came into play. So maybe there was a reason why I never returned that book, you know, just
Yeah.
say it. So, yeah, I use that technique. And then they handcuffed me to the bar. So when the guy went to check up on me, and, nothing, seemed odd or anything. So he went back, turned back around and worked on the safe. I actually wiggled my hand out. And in the process, I shaved off a little bit of skin to the point where it was bleeding. And I got out, but I saw a shadow coming and I jammed my hand back in there. And at this point, there was some blood slowly dripping, just like in the movies, dripping on the floor. I covered my foot with the blood drop. And this is where misdirection came in. Okay, because it's amazing how we learn misdirection, but very rarely do we get to use it in for real, not a trick.
Right.
I looked at the guy and I said, "Can you please give me some water? I need some water to clear my throat. And then he went to give me water. At the time, I was also a smoker. I'm not a smoker anymore, but I noticed he had cigarettes, and I was using that as a distraction also. I'm like, hey, could I have a puff of that? Very accommodating criminal, by the way. So he gave me water, gave me a puff of his cigarette, and not even realizing these little requests, I was actually able to get little bits of information from him by talking to him. And I wasn't even doing this on purpose. It came to me later, like, wow, all these little things I did actually was able to give me information that I retained about them. Like when I asked him for water, he spoke to me. It sounded like it was in a southern accent. When he bent over to give me the water, I noticed in his pocket the Marlboro cigarettes. Also, the radio voice clip, whatever you want to call it, said Motorola. You know, his shoes looking like they're combat boots, that type of thing. So all these little things. He took care of me, went back on the safe, and then as soon as he left, I ripped my arm out and I ran like hell. And the thing is I was paranoid because the way these guys were, they had radios and everything. I'm like thinking maybe they have guys on the outside scoping
Outside.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like are gonna radio them, like lookout guys, or whatever. So again, it's amazing how fast your mind thinks and processes things. So as I'm running, I'm thinking, okay, in my mind, I'm gonna run to this door all the way in the back because I know uh the main street where this restaurant's off of, you can't see that door. It's an exit door. There's trees, bushes hiding it. You don't even know it's there unless you walk behind there. So as I ran out, I pulled the fire alarm. I ran out the door, and it was like a movie, like a horror movie. You ever have that dream where you're trying to run and you feel heavy and you're trying to run fast? That's how it was in real life. I felt heavy and I couldn't run fast. I actually jumped over a 8 foot. I climbed up like a 6 foot fence, and on the other side was all residential houses. I went to a house and I started knocking on the door. It's like 3 a.m. at this point. I can't imagine what those people were thinking when they answered the door because I'm bleeding, I'm panicking,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to, in a really quick way, explain to them what happened so they know I'm not some sort of psycho. They
Right.
left their house, they called the police. Police picked me up to take me to the restaurant, and I'm sitting there in the parking lot. Those guys were gone already. And now all of a sudden it becomes uh, me being a suspect, because that's what they have to do. They have to rule you out, and they had the FBI there and they're questioning me and they're saying, well, this seems like it's a staged thing, you
Well, why
know,
would I call you then?
right? Well, you called me because maybe you had trouble working on a safe and now you're like worried. And so you're coming up with some sort of staged thing. And I
Isn't
said,
that
look,
crazy?
yeah. Now here's the funny thing though, is so and this happened in mid 90s and they didn't really have internet yet. So there's times I was at the restaurant and I would stop and take a break and I would use their phone. It was a landline. I would use my phone sometimes to do my banking. Like I would just, for example, call my bank. That's when you could call your bank and you could punch in numbers, your account number, and they'd tell you your balance and things that cleared, withdrew or whatever. So there's
Right.
times I would do that uh, just because this was part of my business, this restaurant. And I remember that one night I went to call the bank and the phone was dead. I didn't really think anything of it. I even used the payphone in the back later on, and that phone was dead. And then after all this happened, I said to the police, I said, "Yeah, I did they hear the fire alarm?" And they're like, "No, what fire alarm?" And I said, "I pulled the fire alarm when I left." And they went and checked it out. Next thing you know, these guys are going on the roof, the police, the FBI, and these guys were so sophisticated they actually uh, disarmed the alarm, the phones, the burglar alarm. it turns out now I gave the detectives all this important information, the Marlboro cigarettes, the Motorola radio, Southern accent, and I gave them all this information. And about 3 weeks later, they caught them. They were doing another restaurant. They put all the information together based on what I gave them, and it matched. And so, but it turned out that these guys were actually active military people, but on leave. So, yeah, they got in trouble.
And that's what they do at their spare time, huh? Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I'm
So,
glad
I
you
mean,
made it all right. I'm glad you made it out all right.
so as soon as I was released that day to go home, the first thing I did is I looked into the sky and I'm like, "Thank you, God."
Oh, indeed.
Uh, and then at that point, because I explained earlier, I kind of flip-flop getting into magic, out of magic, because I'd get involved with women, and I was insecure. I thought um, that I couldn't focus on the magic because otherwise I wouldn't be around them. I'd lose them. They'd lose interest. They'd meet somebody else because I'm always working or something, you know, with with the magic. All these thoughts would go in my mind. So I prioritized women over me. And so when that happened, at that time, I really wasn't. Uh, yeah, actually, I was back into magic, but when that happened, it made me get into it full blown. That's when, no matter who I met, I was never going to get out of magic again. I made that decision, like, hey, you know, this is what I want to do. I just had this like life-changing moment, and so that's when I knew I wanted to stick with the magic. And of course, it took a good 22 years uh, going to the present day to actually take the leap of faith and leave my job. Because during that time, I had about 5 years later gotten married, had a wonderful son. So sometimes you get detoured.
Been
No.
there, done that. I have a son too. He's only 10, but man, it's the greatest thing that ever happens to you having a kid, and
Oh yeah.
at least I think so. So your wife cheers you on. How long have you been married, and when did you meet your wife?
23 years. We met at a magic club. My wife is
What?
Yeah, my wife is into magic too. She's from New York. She moved out here with her parents. She used to date a magician in New York and work with him at that. And when she moved out here, she used to go to a magic shop. I think it was called Bob James Magic. It was in Elmhurst, Illinois. She used to hang out there. There were magicians that worked there that said, "Hey, you should come to this meeting we have every month." It was like the American Society of Magicians. It was one of their assemblies
Nice.
at a VFW hall. And that day I happened to be doing a lecture. I was doing a lecture on lighting, which I don't even know why I was asked to do the lecture because I wasn't like an expert on lighting. I knew, a little bit, but I really wasn't experienced to do a lecture. But anyway, I'm rigging up this lighting on tripods that I had. And I don't know why, but I happened to look over and I saw this woman there. And I don't even know why this happened, but the first thought was in my mind was, oh my God, that's the lady I'm going to marry. And it's just really bizarre. Like,
That's beautiful.
how could you think that without like knowing the person, you know?
Right. Ever meeting her? What's her name? I don't know.
Yeah,
I know I love her.
right.
You're amazing, my friend.
Yeah. So, yeah. But just back to what you're saying, you're never too old. I just got into magic full time and I'm 56 years old.
Wow. You are an
So
inspiration, brother. You really
thank
are.
you. And that's my goal. I want to inspire people. Uh, when I remember I was on a date in the mid 1990s. I was on a date, and this was when I was again flip-flopping with the magic. And I saw David Copperfield. I took her on a date, and I think the ending of the show he did. I think it was. I don't remember. I think it was the snowstorm.
Okay.
It did snow, and I'll never forget because I happened to see a girl in front of me. She must have been like 11 or 12, and I could see her crying. And it was just very moving. I'm like, man, this is powerful stuff. This is what I would love to do. You know, I think there's a lot to be said about somebody that can actually inspire someone so much that it almost uh it makes them want to go out and go after what they want to do, their dream.
Right.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate to see Copperfield do it was 1997. Uh I was he was performing up in Reno, and I went up there and saw his show. We had great seats in the front row, and I want to say that his flying effect
Hmm.
was one of his new things that he was doing at that time. And sitting in the front row, as a lover of magic, I was just so enthralled when he lifted his arms and just lifted off of the
Yeah.
ground. And I was like, oh, hell no, this didn't just happen. And
Yeah.
he does all these beautiful motions flying and just laying back and just what happened? It just like
Yeah.
and then to top it all off, he gets a girl out of the audience and they
Right.
fly off the stage together.
Right.
My life was never the same after that show. It really wasn't. And my friend next to me, a little smart aleck as he was, well, I could see how that would. I saw the gimmicks, and I was like, "What?" I said, "I'm sitting right here next to you. I didn't see nothing."
Yeah.
He swore he saw the gimmicks on how he did it, and I know it's a trick, but it was
Right.
beautiful, and I won't to take that from Copperfield at all.
Right.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Pure, just the pure feeling in your heart when you see something like almost like the floating dollar. I had a
Yeah.
magician friend of mine, Max, well, Dan Max. Dan Max was his name in Southern California. He invited me over to his apartment one night and he goes, I want to show you this. And in his kitchen, he goes, Do you have a dollar? And I pulled one out of my pocket and he rolled it all up and he put it in his hand and it lifted off of his hands. And I was like, oh my God. A week later, I was doing that trick thanks to him. And
That's
that is
awesome.
always my closer. That is always my closer. People love that.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the thing about exposures is, yeah, there are many methods to doing a trick, but once you give even a nibble of how something like that works, people just their brains work and they'll start watching things in slow
Oh
motion
yeah.
backward, rewind it, ooh, and then they isolate that moment. That's why I don't really like putting my shows or things that I do on video
Right.
because I just don't want to ruin the magic and I don't want it to be because I was a slouch or did something wrong and flashed a gimmick or what have you. I'm very I'm very picky when it comes to things because I just want everything to be perfect and the
Yeah. You're a
mood to be
perfectionist.
yeah. And thanks to recording my act over and over again, it really does help you weed out
Oh
the
yeah.
unnecessary and the just the fat in the act. You just cut it out and redefine yourself. It's been a very big benefit doing that, thanks to McBride, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, when I remember when I first started talking to Steve Hart when he was helping me out, and I was explaining to him how there's times where I'm performing, and now this is going back about 10 years, where there's times where I'm performing and I don't feel like I'm confident or I'm getting the response I need. I don't remember exactly because it was 10 years ago exactly how I worded it with him,
Yeah.
but he asked me how many shows that I think I've done. And since I gotten into magic, I'm like, I don't know. It was like, wasn't a lot. Maybe I'm lucky if it was a few hundred or something. And he's like, well, that's your problem right there. It's like, you don't have enough stage time.
Nope.
It's like, you do more stage time and those things will go away. So I started thinking about how I'm going to get more stage time. And I just started looking up on the internet open mics. And I started going to open mics. Now, usually open mics have, bands, that do they predominantly bands or comedians or
Right.
uh, poetry or something. So, they rarely get magic. So I was able to get in and start doing magic at these open mics. And it's a great place to work out material, try new things out. And that's where I got a lot of my bones because in a very short amount of time, my confidence shot way up there because, you got to be around people. You could
Yeah.
practice all you want, in your own little room and make little videos, but the real bones and guts of what we do is just, people
Live
perform.
performance. Absolutely.
Hey, yeah.
That's why during the pandemic, I know a lot of the professionals were doing Zoom magic shows and what have you for kids' parties.
Mhm.
I, I uh I just can't fathom that because that's
Yeah.
magic is an interactive thing and something you really want to have them in front of you. And this environment right here would be really hard to contain my whole show in this box
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
because I'm all over the place when I'm performing, and it's when I feel the most alive.
Right. Yeah, it's a challenge. When COVID happened, I lost all my restaurants. I was working about 5 restaurants at the time. And, again, I was working my full-time job, which now I'm at home because I couldn't go to work. How the heck do you deliver mail when you're at home? Because I was a mail carrier for the college.
Wow.
So I actually had to come up with things to justify my hours working, and I'd watch videos that had to pertain to my job. And a lot of times the videos weren't even like close to what I was doing, like uh learning I don't even know what you call Excel and things like that. I'd watch a video on the Pony Express, the history of the mail delivery. But uh I would sometimes just randomly walk past my kitchen table and I'd see a deck of cards and I'd pick it up and just do a little trick to myself that maybe I would do in a restaurant just to see if I could remember. And there was a time where there was a good few months where I wasn't keeping up with my magic and I'd pick up I do a coins cross routine and I couldn't remember my lines or anything. The same with one of my card tricks. I couldn't remember my whole presentation. Thank goodness I had it on video. I actually found it on YouTube, a performance of me with some of these tricks.
Yeah.
And I had to actually analyze my executions with the sleights and stuff. Like, okay, how did I do that? Oh, I did this. And even remembering what I said with as far as my lines. So yeah, and I was really worried because when I started getting my restaurants back, I found myself uh, fumbling a little bit with the script that went with the trick. Because even though everything sounds natural when I'm performing it, it's all scripted, you know.
Right.
So, but it did come back to me. I bounced back, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I find that if you take time off from magic, like my 5 year or 6 years away from it, my Chinese linking rings.
Yeah.
I did my routine at McBride's 2 years in a row, and he really helped me add so many nuances to it and so many just little things. When I picked up the rings not too long ago, I found that I didn't remember how to do so many of those moves. And I was like, something's
Yeah.
missing here that I had here that it isn't there now. And I
Right.
had to go back to videos to actually put it back together and go, oh my God. And then even watching myself, I couldn't figure out how to do it again, which was
Yeah.
really weird. I
Oh
had to go
yeah.
back to McBride's videos and
Yeah.
actually learn it again.
Yeah, there's that happened to me too, where you don't you yourself don't know how you did something in the video, and you're like, wow, I'm pretty good.
I'm pretty good. I fooled myself. What did I do? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You are you are
So
right about that.
so there's one way to fix that, which uh I haven't really done yet, and I got to. But some of your favorite magic routines, do, perform it in front of a camera, and then afterwards have a camera maybe behind you, or maybe you could do it in front of you and you could just turn your back to show what you're doing, but go through almost like a walkthrough of what you're doing. Like, yeah, I pick up this ring first. This ring is on the left side of me. This other ring is in my pocket or whatever, my right pocket or
Right.
something like that. Just detailed, so that way if you need to go back, you have it.
A lot of magicians think I'm crazy when I tell them I script everything. I mean, down to what you're talking about. They're like,
Oh,
"Oh, you should just be natural and ad lib through it." And I was like, that might work for you, but I
yeah,
like
some
being
people have the gift,
polished."
right? Some people might have the gift, but I like
Yeah,
mine somewhat scripted, because I want to have a nice flow. I don't want to finish the trick and be like, "Hey, yeah, so yeah, how'd you
trying to
like that?"
think of it.
Pretty,
Yeah.
yeah. And what you're doing is you're coming up with these fill-in words to figure out, process in your brain what trick you're going to do next.
And that's the
Uh,
other thing, editing out the ums and the
right.
and where you're struggling with the story sometimes and you're forgetting little things and uh,
I
getting old
started,
isn't fun.
yeah, I started trying to discipline myself where every show I do, I come up with a work set, and I have on my magic table a whole numbered list of the tricks I'm going to do. So after I'm done, and I always felt like insecure about that, like that the audience is seeing me look at a list.
Looking at your little list there. Oh, I
Yeah,
know.
but
I do the same thing.
it took me a while to get over that. And in fact, the more you do it, the better you get at looking without making it look like you're looking at something. So you
Right.
could have the list. Very important to bring tape with you, because if you're doing shows outside, it's gonna fly around. But I could be performing something. Somebody claps. As they're clapping, I'm looking down and I see it. What's next? You know, because there's nothing worse than a panicky magician that after you do a trick, you're panicking, going in your magic table, trying to frantically find a trick to do next, because you don't have a uh, any idea of what you're doing. Everything's just improv, and
Y-
you're panicking because of the quietness that's happening
See, that's
on.
what people don't realize when you're quiet for like 2 or 3 seconds. I find it feels like an eternity that you
Right.
haven't said anything. And sometimes it's the gestures and what you're doing that you really have to put the emphasis in. It isn't always the words, but sometimes it
Right.
feels like an eternity when you have a brain fart and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, and then
Right.
you jump back in and it's like, man, ooh, that was close.
I'll give you an example. So a lot of my shows, I love doing six card repeat, a classic, and I
Yep.
make up a story how I saw a magician at a festival, and he did this the most amazing things with cards, and I'll never forget that day because it must have been like 110 degrees out. And it was at one of those festivals, those fairs, where they have the big Ferris wheel and all the carnival rides or carnival games that you can't win.
Right.
And I said, it was that day I saw this magician, and I knew that day that I wanted to do the same thing as he did, putting smiles on people's faces and making people happy. So I go to the 6 card repeat. And then when I'm done, then you know, I'll go into another effect where it's another story, and I'll say, when I was little, I used to. So as I'm saying that, taking my top hat off of the table and bringing, the tricky bottles up onto the table. And I'll say, when I was a kid, I grew up in Chicago, and I remember as a kid, one of my favorite things I look forward to was the weekend. Saturday, because that was the day I would wake up early, I'd get a bowl of cereal, and I'd watch cartoons on TV. It's one of my favorite things. And then after that, I would go out and I would look for bottles. And I say back in my time, they would have empty Coke bottles a lot of times just laying on the street. And if you take them, you'd collect them, and you could take them to the store and you'd get money. And that's where I would get my magic candy fix. I'd go there and buy candy. They would have a glass display of all the different uh, one set candies lined up, and I'd get candy. And I said, and one day I found an old Coke bottle, and I started getting into collecting old Coke bottles. And I happen to have a few right here from when I was going around the neighborhood looking for Coke bottles to take to the store. So it opens up. So while I'm telling that story, so again, you're just finishing one trick. I don't have to have dead time and go into my magic table, try to figure out what trick I'm doing next.
Right.
I already see on my list, and I say, "Oh, tricky bottles is next up." The tricky um Coke bottle script.
Right.
You know. So
That's the only way to do it, my friend. You got to have a
right.
script. You got to have a set list. All the greats did it back in the day.
Yeah.
You mentioned Blackstone, Harry Blackstone, Junior, right? Not senior.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. When I was a member of the castle, I attended a thing that they do there called the Strolling Olympics.
Okay.
And I was fortunate enough to be a judge, and the mistress of ceremonies was Gay Blackstone.
Okay.
And I got to lay my eyes on that woman, and I thought, man, she's even more beautiful now than she was back then. Wow, I was really taken back by that woman.
Yeah.
She would inspire anybody to want to be a magician.
Right.
And then, of course, Nani Wilson, Mark's wonderful wife, who is still living and doing very well.
Yeah.
I commend the magic ladies that uh, you know drove the magicians wild back in the day. Remember in the 70s, watching Saturday morning cartoons, there would be those afternoons where Mark Wilson would come on, and he'd have like a little half-hour show or what have you, and they would
Right.
do, him, Greg, and Nani would do their whole routines and stuff. And Mark Wilson really was a big reason why I got into magic, and I would say Doug Henning was a second reason.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
Copperfield came many, many years later, but um, yeah, there'll never be another Doug Henning. Doug had this just childlike wonder when he did his own tricks. Like even he didn't know how he did it.
Yeah.
Wow,
Right.
isn't this amazing? Look, it's like, man, he sold it. And I think that's one of the things I admired the most about him. Mark, thank you so much for joining me today, my friend. And like I said,
Hey,
I will definitely have you back.
definitely. It's a lot
We'll
of fun.
check up with you and see how you're doing in the future. And
Great.
I wish you nothing but the best, my friend. I really do.
Thank you so much. And maybe you'll see me one day at local magic club because I'd really like to start maybe doing lectures on my restaurant success. So
That'd be
I'm
great.
slowly thinking about how I'm going to do that.
Maybe one day we'll meet at the Magic Castle.
There you go. That would
That's
sound
on my bucket
lovely.
list. It's got to be on yours. We'll be there, man.
Sounds good.
Mark, thank you so much, brother. You
Thank you.
have a
You have a
blessed
great,
afternoon.
you too. Take care.
Thank you,
Bye bye.
brother. Bye bye.